Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Black Eagles YouTube channel. The playoff round has just been drawn, or at least the potential opponents for Beşiktaş have just been announced in the playoff round, which will be the final round of the qualifiers for the UEFA Europa League. So, meaning that whoever of these two opponents, which is FK Partizan Belgrade, we are familiar with them, of course, and our seasons from the our opponents rather in the Conference League last season, Lugano, who we are also familiar with. So the winner of that matchup, which the first round of that, the first leg of that, will take place this week actually, and the return leg will be next week. So the victors of that confrontation, I should say, will be our opponents in the final round of the UEFA Europa League qualifiers. And yeah, that's either going to be Lugano, who we played last season, or Partizan Belgrade, who we played a couple of seasons ago. I think this is an interesting draw for sure. Potential opponents other than these would have been, for example, Panathinaikos and Ajax, and some other tough opponents. I think we can say from our experience with Lugano last season, they are extremely well coached. They are tactically very strong. Their coach, their name, I believe it's Coach Totti. He's really a fantastic coach. I think somebody with a great career ahead of him. They showed that again in the Champions League qualifiers against Fenerbahce, I think, where in both confrontations, I really thought Lugano were the better team, especially in the first halves of both matches. Fenerbahce kind of turned on the switch, or turned up the quality a little bit in the second halves of their respective legs against Lugano. But I think a team like Lugano, who, if I'm not mistaken, were even missing one of their most important players for those two games against Fener. They made it really difficult for a team that in the Super League last season got 99 points, a team that were far better than us last season. We have to be honest about that. And a team that kept together basically their entire squad and only added on to it. So we do have to praise Lugano, I think, in that regard, where they made it very difficult for Fenerbahce. They outplayed Fenerbahce in both games, I really felt. And at the end of the day, it was really the difference in individual quality that Fenerbahce had, with players like Eden Dzeko, with Dusan Tadic, with, those level of players, which of course Beşiktaş now have too, with a Rafa Silva, with a Ciro Immobile. So I think if we look at that, Lugano look like a very likely opponent. Although I do have to say against that, I have to say that I am not very familiar with how Partizan are doing nowadays. So regardless of who of these two opponents we come up against, I think we have a really good opportunity, a really good chance to make it to the Europa League group stages. However, both teams are dangerous. Both teams can surprise. We know from Lugano how tactically strong they are. And Partizan are a top team from Serbia. So you always have to be on your guard. Regardless of who of these two teams we will play, we will of course do a preview for that double confrontation. Maybe if we get Partizan, it's a good excuse to get our former guest Sonja Niksevic, who you all know from our intro. She voiced the intro to the podcast years ago when we signed Adem Ljajic. We had her on as a guest, and I think she returned for our confrontation with Partizan back then as well, because we had a game against Partizan in the Europa League group stages back then. So she's been a return guest on the podcast. So perhaps we will have Sonja back on. Otherwise, another return guest, hopefully, if he can make time in his busy schedule, Oliver Zessiger, who we've had on last season, of course, and in the past we've had him on before as well, as a Swiss football scout, now also a director in the second division of Swiss football. So we will see It doesn't matter to us, of course, who we draw. Either team are fine. They're both quality sides, no doubt. But Beşiktaş should have a good chance to go through to the next round, which means group stage football in Europe. Now, if worst should come to worst and Beşiktaş go out in the playoff round of the qualifiers, of course, we will still be guaranteed group stage football, but in the Conference League then. So whether or not it's going to be Europa League or Europa Conference League, Beşiktaş are guaranteed European group stage football. Of course, the Europa League slightly better finances. And also, we need to keep in mind the format is changing. So the Europa League format is changing, the Champions League format is changing, which also means no drop down from the Champions League. So the qualifiers, yes, teams that drop out of the Champions League qualifiers will still drop down into the Europa League qualifiers. However, teams that drop out of at the league stage, I should say, now it's no longer the group stage. There's no longer drop off from the group stage or the league stage in the tournament like we used to have, where the third team in the group stages would go down to the Europa League. That is gone completely. So there will be no drop off in that regard. So the quality that starts the tournament at the league or group stage, so to speak, that is the quality of opponents you're going to get. There are not going to be any stronger teams coming in from the Champions League later on. So whoever makes it to the final stage, which is group / league stage, however you want to call it, that is your opponents or your potential opponents for the remainder of the tournament. That's an interesting concept change for the Europa League and, of course, the Champions League, the Conference League, all that. So, yeah, let's make it to those group stages, make it to the league stage. Let's get past either Partizan or Lugano, and we'll be back later this week with the next episode of the Black Eagles podcast, episode 290, where we will be giving away our 3 shirts that we'll be announcing the winners rather of our shirt giveaway. And of course, we will be talking more in depth about our recent victory in the Turkish Super Cup against Galatasaray. And of course, we will also be talking about our potential European opponents, and previewing the match against Samsunspor on Sunday in the Super League. See you later.